Blended workforces are one of the hottest talent strategies today, where employers are using a mix of traditional employees with external resources like independent contractors, coaches, consultants, vendors, and technology solutions, all in order to enhance competitiveness, ensure cost flexibility, and expedite business goals. But how are the successful companies infusing blended workforces into their business strategy? And what are the critical success factors and pitfalls to avoid during implementation? And on the flip side, what does it really take for suppliers to improve their chances of finding and landing contract opportunities? The devil is in the details, my friends. I'm your host, Karen Farrell Rhodes, and it's time to get smarter about blended workforces at work. Hello, my superstars. This is Karen, and welcome to another episode of the Blended Workforces at Work podcast. I am just absolutely thrilled to have on today's show Sara Fortier, and she is the CEO and founder of Outwitly. Now, Outwitly Inc. is an 8-figure UX and service design staffing agency that finds that finds and coaches change-making design practitioners and empowers private and public organizations to innovate at scale through blended workforce solutions. Now, that was a mouthful. I messed it up a little bit, but we're going to have a great conversation with Sara because I was truly fascinated with Outwitly and her leadership of the company and how they actually help clients really enhance their talent. And I'm going to let her tell that story because I know I will murder it, although I had a great time reading about it. But welcome to the podcast, Sara.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we're just thrilled to have you. And, I can't wait to delve into our conversation. But before we do so, we always love to learn just a tad more about our guests. So for just as much as you feel comfortable, can you give us a sneak peek into your life outside of work?
Sure. Yes. Well, we were just talking about it before, but I am a mom. So that's a big piece of my life. And I have a
Yes.
5-year-old son and I guess she's about 16-month-old daughter now. So they keep me really busy. And then, so I live in Winnipeg, Canada with my husband. And then we also just recently bought, I guess, from the Humane Society. So we did purchase her a cat.
Oh,
And
a
she's
fur
really
baby.
cute. Yeah, fur baby. She's a Siamese and she's like racing around because she's one. And so she's got lots of energy. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of chaos, but lots of fun.
Oh, I could imagine. Oh, and congratulations on the new addition to the family, the fur
Yes.
baby, and then
Yes.
also on your young family as well. I'm sure they keep you all running
Yes,
and
exactly.
active. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And I'm going to kind of turn the tables a bit more on the professional level. And let's start out, if you don't mind, by, if you can share just a few highlights, milestones of your professional career. And then can you share with us what led you to found Outwitly?
Yes. So I am originally from Ottawa, Canada, and I studied industrial design, which is the design of 3D products. Think about your Dyson at home, that's designed by industrial designers.
Mhm.
And I did a master's in design and learned about how the design process could be applied to businesses, to 3D digital products and services. And that's kind of where I fell in love with UX design.
Mhm.
And so from there, I actually moved out to Silicon Valley and worked with a lot of big tech companies out there doing actual UX design work. So nothing related to talent or HR, staffing, anything like that.
Mhm.
And then I moved back to Canada and founded Outwitly in 2016, originally just as a consulting firm. So I was, it was just me and under the guise of we, and I would, say, yes, sure, we can do
We
that for
can
you.
do it, of course.
Yes. And it was just me doing all the work behind the scenes. Um, but so that was like helping our clients actually design products. So mobile apps, desktop applications, or sometimes it would be like a service, like how to reinvent the process for getting your driver's license, for example.
Mm.
And so did consulting kind of up until well, we still do it in a way, sort of for our favorite clients,
Mhm.
but it's not something we talk about as often. So that we made a pivot in the last few years to really be focused on staffing, because I started getting asked by clients, "Hey, could you come work for us full time for 6 months?" And I was like, "Oh no, like I have so many other clients, but I've got a
Sure.
friend."
Mhm.
And so I just used my network in the beginning. I just used people that I had been connected with, that I liked working with at other jobs, and who were available to take on contract work, and kind of grew the staffing side almost by accident.
That's a
Where
great thing.
now, yeah, where now it's actually the main part of our business, and really how we try to position ourselves as talent partners.
Oh, I love that. And I know I didn't do Outwitly justice. So if you could please just click down one level and share with our listeners exactly what is the company and how you best service your clients.
Yeah, so we sort of frame ourselves as talent partners for building high impact teams, high impact products and services.
Mhm.
And what that means is essentially we, go meet our clients, and we help them assess and understand what types of designers or researchers they might need on their team. And we go
Mhm.
out and we find the best people that, with a lot of vetting and um, thought leadership brings a lot of people to us. And yeah, and then we place mostly contractors right now on, long-term contracts with our clients.
Mhm.
And our clients tend to be, anywhere from large public sector organizations to
Mhm.
large enterprise level Fortune 500 clients in insurance or finance, e-commerce, all different types of industries, but essentially placing UX designers and service designers in those companies.
Amazing. And I'm assuming, just because you're very knowledgeable about blended workforces, UX designers through like an agency like yours allow companies to scale quickly when they need to and scale back, I guess, when they
Yeah,
need to as well, without having to absorb, all the cost of, full-time talent. That's
yeah,
kind of the value
exactly.
add, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you followed along with the tech industry, I'm sure you're very familiar with all the layoffs and things that have
Yes,
occurred over
goodness.
the last few years, right? So, like
Yeah.
the big tech companies have just laid off like swaths and swaths of people,
Yeah.
and that really impacts the UX community, because essentially we're designing digital products, and
Mhm.
so it is interesting to see how, with a staffing or talent based business, that actually you can do quite well in those times, because clients are feeling a little afraid, and they're not maybe getting the budget to add to the permanent headcount, but the
Right.
work still comes. They still need to, produce the products that their customers are waiting to use. And so they kind of turn to these contractor agreements and staffing, or staff
Mhm.
augmentation. And so that's where I found, like, for our clients, especially with the uncertainty with AI and all the geopolitical stuff happening,
Yeah.
and where they're a bit afraid, or they don't have the budget to grow permanently, they can
Mhm.
still grow their teams, and sometimes half their teams are made up of contractors,
Yeah,
which is
absolutely.
great. Yeah,
It is, and especially in the digital and tech spaces, those industry or job functions were some of the first to kind of embrace external talent
yeah,
on the team, and a lot of the other job functions are catching up now, or have caught up.
yeah,
But it the reason I'm mentioning that is that it's not a foreign concept to the folks
yeah.
that you're probably talking to, that you don't have to sell them on it. You just have to make sure that they
Yes.
understand your terms and find the right talent, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we're always sort of, I mean, oftentimes they'll come to us more because if they're a bigger company, they don't want the headache of dealing with individual contracts, for individual contractors, and they might have a need of, I need 5 UX designers to join our team,
Hmm.
and they would prefer to work with sort of this in between vendor. Which so yeah, usually not selling them on the fact that, hey, this can be really helpful. They're already there, and which is a good place to be. And then you have sometimes on the flip side of that, though, there can be a bit of a headache with the contractors viewing you as a, a middle in between middleman, and maybe not having the respect for, actually there's a lot of work to be that in between of the vendor to the client and to the contractor. And so really
Yes.
had to prove our value on that side of it, actually, to the contractors, to say, no, actually we're here as like a support to you and to help you through your journey here. And yes, of course we take a margin because we're a business,
Right.
but we can help them with a lot of the ups and downs that they might face, or help them not feel so isolated in their roles, even help them grow in their careers.
That's amazing. Now, I'm curious how you coach or how you handle, either personally or coach your team, to balance between client needs and the utilization of
Mhm.
your um, contractors, because I
Yeah,
know that's a big issue a lot of times,
huge
making
thing.
sure that you can balance them both. And usually there's one need that you have that's overpowering another, and it may, switch off
Yeah.
at different times. But how do you think through that and manage that?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and something that's obviously probably
Tough.
one of the biggest challenges, right?
Yeah.
Because you are a business to start, and so the business has to be profitable,
Yeah.
and so you have to think, well, how do you be profitable? And utilization is one of those KPIs that you look at,
Mhm.
and but at the same time, you don't want to appear, or you don't want to even be heartless and say, well, just get your hours in, right?
Right.
Um, so I mean, I always think that the client needs do come first because they are the driver for the business. And I think that contractors, and I think everyone understands that. Even they feel that if the client asks them to do something, that client's needs comes first as well. So I feel like there's just a general understanding of, that is just the truth. Um, and then, but on the piece where sometimes you could have, just even a toxic work environment on the client side, or
Mhm.
they're even just struggling with, well, I don't have that much work to do, so I kind of just thought maybe I would take days off here. I might not put in a full 8-hour day, because it's not really demanded of them, even though it is in
Right.
the contract, right?
It is. It
Yes,
is.
yeah. And so, so there's sort of two different scenarios. One is they're not happy for some reason, and that could be a toxic work environment. It could be the work doesn't inspire them, or it could be just burnout central, and so they maybe don't want to continue working, or they want to reduce their hours or something. And then the other scenario is they're actually not that busy, and so on the not busy side, we always try to encourage our contractors to be really proactive, and we actually try to vet for proactive people, because I think if you come
Really?
from a yeah because if you come from an employee background, you could be very used to sort of sitting on your laurels if no manager assigns you work.
That's true.
It's maybe like a really rude thing to say, but I think there's less of a drive to really prove yourself, and if you're getting your work done, then that's sort of enough.
Right.
um, and that's not true of everyone, because obviously there's very ambitious employees who want to climb the ladder and everything. But if you're a contractor, you actually do have to be proactive. You have to go out and look for opportunities to improve something. You need to go out and try to have coffee chats to get to know other stakeholders. And so we look for, and we also really encourage that type of behavior in our contractors, so that
Mm.
they are fully utilized, and they are finding work and finding a place to be valuable, and they're not just sitting there because no one has handed them something to do.
I love that.
um, so that piece, and then on the piece where it's like they're not happy, then I think it really starts with empathy, and
Mhm.
understanding what's going on. Tell me a little bit more about that, so that you can get to the crux of it. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes from that place, then we're just really honest with our contractors, and we're saying, from our perspective, like, we do need to try to get the hours up, but completely understand where coming from. Let's
Right.
try to give you like actionable, tangible tips that you could maybe help you in what you're doing to make the environment better. And that could be things about understanding the different layers of the organization and, how to navigate tricky stakeholders and things like that. Or it could be, let's go to the client and say, hey, we're hearing these patterns and these trends. What have you heard? Is this something that we could help you, through some sort of coaching or more of a strategic role that we could play to help soften these things, even through fractional leadership, which we also offer. So there's different strategies, I guess, based on why they might not be utilizing their time.
No, and I totally understand that. And it's tough. I mean, because we're in a similar situation, but we're on the human capital side,
Okay.
on that HR related type of experts. And you're right. You have to balance, the needs of the client with the needs of your personnel as well. But
Yeah.
you're right. You default to the client because you have to maintain the business.
Yeah.
But you do all that you can to make sure that your external staff is as skilled, as knowledgeable, and as happy as possible,
Yeah.
within the bounds that you can. So I
Yeah.
definitely
And I think,
understand
yeah. And I was just going to say, like, I think expectation setting at the outset with those contractors before they go into the environment is really helpful. So, like, letting them know this type of client is like this, that you might run into these culture challenges or, and so that they're really set up for success and they actively say, yes, I want to go and be in that environment. I understand what some of the challenges will be.
that.
I think can be really helpful. And yeah, I think just being a kind person, I think we really value that as one of our company values is to be kind and to be
Yeah,
sincere and have empathy for everyone.
everyone.
Because
Yeah.
when you start from that place, then people feel respected, they feel heard, they want to work with you to make it better. And then we give them the tools, like, so we'll coach them on how can you navigate challenging stakeholders, or how can you deal with it in our case, difficult product owners. uh,
That's amazing.
so yeah, try to help them.
That's amazing. And I'm curious as well. Do you all happen to do anything, or do you try to do anything, or level set with your clients as well? Because I know there's
Mhm.
some clients that their onboarding and culture is amazing for
Yes.
contractors, freelancers coming in, and there's some that I'll just say politely they lack that
Yes.
infrastructure in doing
Oh
so.
my gosh. Yes.
And it's challenging as your team is trying to be successful when a lot of things aren't in place, like access to things or
Yeah.
true collaboration. I'm curious, do you try to coach, or how do you try to ensure that clients are ready to
Yeah.
really onboard your talent?
Yeah, so that is very interesting and something I didn't realize at the beginning how important that is.
Yes.
Um, and so over time, I realized, okay, if they have great onboarding, then we're going to be good. And if they don't have great onboarding, I have to literally tell them you might struggle for 3 months while you try to learn the organization and what you're
Yeah,
supposed to do there.
that's right.
Um, yeah. And so in terms of our ability to have input on that, it really depends on the client. Some clients are really open and they have the ability to create their own onboarding. They're
Right.
not there might not be a ton of bureaucracy saying you have to do it this way, or and also it depends on our sort of relationship with the client, where, for example, in public sector, there's very little you can do to help them,
Mhm.
or input you can give them,
Right.
because there is sort of this hard line drawn between the vendor and the
There it is.
government people.
Yeah.
Whereas in private sector, there's a lot more flexibility of how you might help. And so in the scenario where you can have some input, we sort of do ask our clients as part of an onboarding meeting we have with them, what are your onboarding processes?
Mhm.
And then we learn a little bit more about what they plan to do. And so then we can set some expectations with the contractor.
Yeah.
And we can also have input in that meeting, like, oh, have you thought about, a 30, 60, 90-day plan for them? Or, will all their tech be set up, or whatever the things are. But I find that meeting can be really valuable, just to level set on what some good tips are. We've even, we've sent resources over, and they'll use them or create their own or whatever. So that can be good. And then on the side where you don't have input, we try to create as much wrapper for our contractors as we can. So we have our own onboarding, and, we'll, based on our knowledge of the client and its inner workings, and if we've worked with them for years, we've sort of developed an understanding of what they need to know. We've gathered documents to show who the sort of the departments are and the people that they'll need to get to know. So we try our best to sort of soften that onboarding for them as much as we can on our side to help them.
Absolutely. We do the same, and we have a consulting excellence program that we do for our talent as well. And one piece of that is that those who are assigned to the same client, we try to do 15-minute check-ins, maybe once every week or every 2 weeks, just so that they can share with each other things that they've learned about the company, the culture, the do's, the don'ts, give
Yes.
advice to each other. So we've tried to empower our people who have been assigned and contracted to the
Yes.
client to also share back, because the more they share back, that helps everybody be successful and hopefully extend engagements and things like that
Yeah.
as
That's
well.
great. Yeah, that's a great tip and idea. We do something similar with coaching, where we have, for certain clients where we have, many individuals placed there, we'll have a coach assigned.
Nice.
And they might meet them bi-weekly, weekly, sometimes monthly, kind of depends.
Yeah.
And they have a bit of an onboarding with that coach to go through some of the, what they've learned. And then in the group coaching calls, they can share this knowledge that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I feel like that is very helpful.
It is. It definitely is. Um, since you've kind of been on, I guess, the blended workforce is, I call it the three-legged stool, full-time employee, external talent, and technology. You've dipped your toe in a couple of those on the
Yeah.
areas on the three-legged stool. And I'm curious if you have any, personal advice or recommendations or things to think about for companies who are for the first time considering bringing external talent into
Hmm.
their organizations to help with their agility to be able to get work done. What are maybe one or two things that come to mind that you would love to give them advice on as they, really consider blended workforces and adding great companies like yours to the team?
Yeah. Well, I think in terms of, like, when you're talking about the resources and the talent that they will end up bringing in, if it's through a vendor, like us, or even individuals, would be to think about, does this person have a consultant's mindset, and what does that mean, right? So I was talking about that earlier, where there's folks that come from really being an employee background, and that's fine. And oftentimes they do end up being successful because they have aspects of that mindset. But what I found is people who are proactive, people who are, the self-starters, people who are great communicators, and they're also very deeply skilled and masterful at their craft of the thing that they're doing, right?
Mhm.
But they have this ability to sort of influence people, and they have presence when they're on a call. Like, those are the skills that I feel are always just very successful when you bring in a third, because they have to ramp up super quick into an environment that they don't know or understand. They have to get to know all new people, and they may only be there for 6 months or a year.
Right.
And so their ability to actually start executing with the full context of the organization in a way that's efficient and good for the company, and I feel is very tied to those sort of soft skills. So I would say that's the type of talent ideally that you would be bringing in.
Mhm.
Um, and then other tips, I would say, if it's a vendor, that to really look for folks that you, one, get along with, but also that are there to be your strategic partner and can give you advice on how to build your team, or things that might be coming up and challenges that you might be facing, and have some of that subject matter expertise can be really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Um, and I know you all do a lot to help your talent from not feeling so isolated and lonely. And I'd love for you to speak to that just a little bit about what you can do or what you all try to do to keep them, you know, really motivated and feeling connected.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that stemmed from because I used to be an independent contractor. And I was like, I'm all by myself here. And, you don't have professional
Hello.
development opportunities and training. And, they
Right.
don't invite you to a lot of the stuff because you're sort of like apart. And
Right.
honestly, I liked being that way. But
Mhm.
there are some aspects of it where you kind of wish you had a bit of a community or someone to talk to about that particular client or the challenges. So, knowing that, and then as I started hiring folks and they just asked for a call with me,
Mhm.
hey, I'm having a challenge, could I chat with you?
Mhm.
And I realized what they were coming to me for was really like I was almost their therapist related
Right.
to this very specific client. I was like, okay, so you kind of need a coach here or someone to help you along.
Yeah.
um, and so because we have that subject, we're designers finding designers, we can really relate to their actual problems that they have, and talk to them about it and give them real tips on things they could do to make it better. And so we do two main things, I guess. One is that we do have a Slack community for each of our client uh, teams, I guess anyone who's placed at that client.
Mhm.
And we also provide a coach to have those calls with them that I mentioned. And I
Mhm.
think that helps just let them know that they're not alone, that they have someone they can go to.
Yeah.
Half of the people don't utilize it. Even it might even be more than half of the people because they've gotten to a point where they feel really comfortable. They're a senior and they don't need that, but
Yeah.
they often will use it in the beginning, the first like 3 to 6 months, if it's like a multi-year placement,
Mhm.
just to know who else is there and hear, share some of that knowledge and things like that. So even though it's I would say underutilized, it's there. And for the people that need it, who are more intermediate in their career or at the early stages of the contract, it's really, really helpful. And then they might poke in occasionally and say, oh, you know what? I want to come back to this coaching session because I've got a big presentation coming up and I'd love your thoughts on it.
On it. Yeah.
So they
As needed.
always know that it's there. Yeah.
That's that. I love what I love about that is that kind of on-demand access for peer support
Yeah.
is invaluable because you're right. There's some times where they may not need it or have too much you're doing, and
Yeah.
you don't want to interfere with their productivity, but you want to be
Right.
there for support when they need it. I love that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely. Well, Sarah, gosh, I can't believe we're almost out of time. I looked up and we were having such a great conversation, but we can't let you sneak out of here without asking you our signature question that we ask all of our guests. And for my new listeners out there, our firm did research on high performing leaders and companies. And out of that research came 7 buckets of success factors. We call them tactics, but they're 7 main buckets of success factors that are executed anytime someone's leading at the top of their games. And so we always ask our guests which of the 7, which are all equally as important and use them at different times, which of the 7 really resonated with them. And Sarah was so kind to share that having stakeholder savvy really popped for her. And stakeholder savvy is all about, it's kind of the sister to emotional intelligence, but it's really all about having a high degree of interpersonal dynamics and knowing how to operate effectively in different situations that you come across. Getting to know people, for instance, you might perform differently when you're interviewing versus when you're at a happy hour kind of thing. So curious minds would love to know, Ms. Sarah, why did stakeholder savvy really pop for you?
Yeah, and actually there were several that really stood out, but I chose that one because I think it's probably been a through line for my through my career, as
Mhm.
even when I was working for other companies, and true to today, which is that if you can understand people and you can navigate the politics and you can empathize with them, and you really understand where that stakeholder might be coming from, why they might be acting that way, it
Mhm.
can it can help you. So I guess the idea is when sometimes there are people who are challenging.
Yeah.
Yep,
Believe it or not.
yep, and it has nothing to do with you,
Yeah.
actually. And if you can understand, why they might be feeling that way, why they might be reacting that way, and then you can hear them out and you can let them air all of their fears, things that are coming up for them, and you say, "I hear you. Okay, so what I'm hearing is X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
and what I want you to know is not to worry about that piece because we'll take care of this part to sort of quell a lot of their fears, because most of that comes from fear."
Right.
Um, and so I've just been very good at that part, that emotional intelligence part, and being able
Mhm.
to connect with people and understand them. And it also makes sense as a designer because design is meant to be human centered and really
That's
about
right.
understanding
Yes,
the
that
needs
takes
of people.
time.
So yeah, that one made a lot of sense to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your perspectives there. And as you know, we'll have your detailed bio and links and everything in the show notes. But I always love to give our guests time to airtime to also share where folks can find more about you and your company. So, if they were interested in understanding more about Sarah and Outwitly, where can they find you?
Yeah, so outwitly.com will be the best place to find out about the company. So that's
Mhm.
outwitly.com.
Mhm.
And then we're pretty active on Instagram and LinkedIn as well. And then for me personally, I'm most active on LinkedIn. So just linkedin.com, I think, /Sara Fortier, and you'll find me there.
Awesome. And for you all, Fortier is spelled Fortier. So that's correct, right,
And
Sarah?
it's Sara with no H.
No H. There you go. That's the second catch.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sarah, for the gift of your time today. This was a fantastic conversation and episode.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And thank you too, listeners, for the gift of your time as well. Because as I always say, we know there are literally other millions of podcasts out there for you to listen to, and we do not take your patronage lightly at all. All that we ask is that you like and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform of choice and share the podcast with just one friend, because by doing so, we'll all get smarter about blended work versus at work. Thanks a ton, and see you next week. Well, that's our show for today. Thank you again for listening to the Blended Workforces at Work podcast. You can check out the show notes, additional episodes, bonus resources, and also submit guest recommendations on our website at blendedworkforcesatwork.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, or YouTube by searching for the name Karen Rhodes, with Karen being spelled Karan. And if you like the show, the greatest gift you can give would be to subscribe and leave a rating on your favorite podcast platform of choice. This podcast has been a production of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global consultancy which helps organizations execute their people, talent development, and organizational effectiveness initiatives on an on-demand, contract, fractional, or project basis. Huge thanks to the SDL production and editing team for a job well done. Bye for now.